episode of Real Talk, brought to you by the Scott County Public Library. I'm your host, Lincoln, here to guide you through the library's collection of movies you may love or some you may have missed. Today we have a few films I'm very excited to talk about that deal with the sticky business of time travel. First up, I am really happy to talk about one of the feel-good movies of 2020 that I personally just loved and adored, in Bill and Ted Face the Music. Directed by Dean Parasot and written by the creators Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, Bill and Ted Face the Music felt like something of a soothing balm to the year that was 2020. It was a delight to see these uncynical and lovable characters again doing their best to save the world, and this time with the addition of their family, in the only way they know how, through the power of rock and roll and time travel. With an absurdist sense of humor and easygoing nature, this bookend on the Bill and Ted journey feels like a great conclusion point for the duo and is one of the best movies I've ever seen about the love for fathers and daughters. It's just a nice movie about nice people doing their best in a cynical and unforgiving world. And of course, it teaches us an evergreen truth. Be excellent to each other and party on, dudes. Next up, we have what is perhaps one of the most popular and quintessential movies ever about time travel. You know what I'm talking about. Back to the Future from 1985, starring Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. Written together by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, the initial idea for this film came way back in the summer of 1980, 5 years before the movie was ever released, by Zemeckis and Gale. They had both shooting the movie Used Cars with Kurt Russell when Bob Gale went back to his home in St. Louis and stayed with his parents. While there, he was in the basement looking at old high school yearbooks and just discovering all his parents doing all these things as young ones in high school. And he kind of had an idea. Would I be friends with my parents if we went to the same high school at the same time? And with that germ of an idea, he came back to LA and told Zemeckis. And with that germ, it turned into this idea of Marty McFly, the skateboard-loving, rock and roll-playing boy who goes traveling back in time to save his parents' marriage. Unfortunately, because Zemeckis and Bob Gale had not made a financial hit for any of their films they had wrote, which included the Spielberg movie 1941, which is one of the only movies ever for Spielberg that didn't perform financially or critically. But then in 1984, that all changed when Zemeckis wrote and directed the hit movie Romancing the Stone. From the start, both the studios and the production was wanting Michael J. Fox as their number one choice. But at the time, Michael J. Fox was under contract with Family Ties, which was the number one sitcom at that time. So production had to look to other places at that time, so they went with Eric Stoltz, who you may know now from the movie Mask in 1985, and then later on with the hit Quentin Tarantino film Pulp Fiction. They shot as much as 5 weeks worth of filming with Eric Stoltz before Gale and Zemeckis realized this was not the movie that they were wanting, and it just didn't feel right. So after 5 weeks, they were somehow able to go back to the studio and ask them to refilm all 5 weeks. And then they went to Gary Goldberg at the time and basically pleaded with him, will you let us use Michael J. Fox? And ultimately, Gary Goldberg did let them use Michael J. Fox, but with the exception that it had to be at nights or on his off weekends when he wasn't shooting Family Ties. And the rest, as they say, is history. Back to the Future became one of the top grossing movies of 1985, as well as becoming a major touchstone in pop culture. Lastly, I want to mention the often overlooked 2005 adaptation of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which you can watch on Hoopla with your library card. Starring Martin Freeman and Mos Def, Hitchhiker's Guide is a picture that starts at the end of the world, and that's just the beginning of the movie. I found this movie to be lovable, humorous time with a who's who's gallery of famous faces, plus an absolute scene-stealing role by the late, great Alan Rickman as a terminally depressed robot. So remember to grab your towel, relax through this fun time of a picture based off the legendary novels of Douglas Adams. All of these week's films can be found at the public library or using Hoopla if you have a card with the Scott County Public Library. I want you to search them out and decide for yourself if you like them. And you can always come back into Facebook, YouTube, or our website to watch any episode of Real Talk. This has been Lincoln, your host, here to remind you on Real Talk to watch more movies.